KOIN TV, Portland, Vancouver. The news station for Oregon and Southwest Washington, where people make the difference. Mike Donahue, Shirley Hancock, Bill Volker with weather, and Rick Metzger sports. Newsroom 6 at 5.
Hundreds of Tektronix workers today learn they are losing their jobs.
And safer sex may not be taught to all Oregon students.
Good evening, I'm Shirley Hancock.
And I'm Mike Donahue. 300 Tektronix employees were laid off today. 700 more will go by the end of May. Tech executives call it streamlining to improve growth and profitability.
And laid-off employees told us today that they are shocked by the news. Ken Body is standing by now at the Tektronix plant in Wilsonville. Ken, was there no hint of the impending layoffs?
Well, there have been rumors about layoffs at Tektronix for weeks, but employees are surprised by the severity of the layoffs as well as how quickly they're coming. Now, the first 300 layoffs occurred here in Wilsonville at the Information Products Group, but they won't be the last. Most of the layoffs come from the managerial and professional ranks. They will reduce the Tektronix Oregon workforce from 11,000 to about 10,000.
Tech has expenses that have continued to grow while our sales have stayed flat. And we have a new management team that's taking a hard look at the whole business, figuring out the areas where we can get some growth going. And at the same time, we've got to have more profitability than we've had in recent months.
Over the past several years, Tektronix has had sluggish sales of many of its products, which include oscilloscopes and graphic printers for computers. The company laid off 2,000 people in June of 1986. At that time, it was thought the worst was over. But then the figures came out for the fiscal quarter that ended in November of '87. Sales stayed flat while net earnings dropped 72%. A new president, David Friedley, presided over a management shakeup that ended in January. The new management team is committed to making Tech, quote, lean and aggressive.
It's the fact that sales have stayed flat that has really been the issue, and you end up with an appetite for more projects and programs than you can handle.
Cynthia Gens got her 2-week notice today.
It's grim. I'm amazed. For the people that are still here, it's a tough time to be one of the few people that's still here. And for the people that have been, asked to leave, it's really bad.
But she says she will probably fare better than some others.
But I know a lot of people have been really hard hit. People who've got big, who are sole source supporters for their families.
Industry observers admit that major layoffs at the state's largest private employer send a negative message about Oregon high tech.
We're in a very good position. Oregon is a very healthy place to locate a company, very healthy place to grow. We have come off a record fourth quarter of 1987, a record year in 1987. We see upward growth in 1988, so business for us is fine.
French says that despite some failures, there is still enough slow growth to possibly absorb many of those laid off.
We will entertain any resumes, we'll entertain any activity from those employees. Again, the idea is to match their skills with our needs.
While the Tektronix layoff may be isolated, it is no less painful for those who are having their lives turned upside down. Now, the other 700 layoffs will occur throughout the Portland metropolitan area, and they will be announced over the next few weeks. Tektronix officials say that they want to get this round of layoffs over with, even though it's painful, and get on to profitability. Mark and Shirley?
Ken, what kind of severance package can the employees expect?
Well, according to the company, the employees will get 1 week of severance pay for every year that they've been with the company, with a minimum of 2 weeks' pay. So it's not a whole lot of money they're getting.
Thank you. Ken Body outside Tech's Wilsonville plant.
Massive layoffs do not occur in a vacuum. They certainly have a definite rippling effect. It changes lives and communities.
In this lake we know as the greater Portland metropolitan area, 1,000 layoffs may not seem a lot, but they don't really stand out in a workforce of 600,000.
Even so, it matters greatly to the woman Mark Sanchez met today.
I was proud, and I have always been proud of being a custodian.
Shirley is the face behind the layoffs. After 8 years, Shirley's job at Tektronix came to an end, as well as those of other custodians in her unit.
Misses don't come in at all 9 of us. So we were out the door.
Shirley figures she'll find another job soon, perhaps before Tech finishes cutbacks that will put 1,000 more people on the street. Already, a half-dozen Tektronix employees have come to this state employment office inquiring about benefits which can range up to $222 a week and other available services. This office in Beaverton has long been prepared for the ups and downs in the high-tech marketplace. It has a full-time specialist dealing with job casualties in the electronics industry.
We usually hold an initial interview to get some idea what kind of work they're looking for, what areas they're willing to move to, and what kind of help and assistance they actually need. A lot of these folks will go to headhunters and may have already made these contacts. Some of these people from Tektronix may be eligible for Trade Readjustment Act benefits, in which case that might extend or make additional benefits available.
Inevitably, the tech layoffs will force some people out of their homes. 8,400 homes are already for sale across Portland. A few more in the inventory could feed a short-term buyer's market.
I think it will soften a little bit, probably. We will not see an increase in sales prices. Some of that has been a little bit anticipated. Prices should stay stable, but that makes it good for the purchase side.
And what do 1,000 layoffs do to the effort to market an effective development strategy here?
It certainly doesn't help, Mark. There's no doubt about that. But what it does show is that the base employment there are willing to really do what they can to make themselves more competitive in a national and international market. In the long term, it will make the whole Tualatin Valley stronger, much stronger.
Phillips believes the local marketplace can absorb the Tektronix layoff. Surely we'll test that notion. Mark Sanchez reporting for Newsroom 6.
Oregon's top educator today changed his lesson plan for teaching students about AIDS. After encountering heavy criticism from parents who believe AIDS education encourages sex, Superintendent Vern Duncan revised the rules he's proposing. Senior correspondent Chuck Diamond tells us more.
The first hearing on a state education department plan to require AIDS education did not go well for the department.
This is strictly a sex education and a homosexual education because our children are not homosexuals.
State School Superintendent Vern Duncan responded today by changing the proposed state requirement.
The old rule, the way we talked about abstinence, it sort of ran along with everything else as if we thought abstinence and safer sex all ought to be taught. We really believed, and in fact our discussions before that, our intent was that abstinence was obviously the best method.
Not only will education on safer sex practices not be required, there's another change. The kindergarten through 12th grade instruction requirement is out, and one allowing as little as 1 year of education in elementary, middle school, and high school is in. What new information did Duncan come across to cause the change?
Well, okay, maybe we don't know anything new, we're just saying it differently.
Duncan denied he had caved in to pressure from conservative opposition to AIDS education.
I think it's irresponsible if we fail to deal with this issue and in a realistic way.
Claudia Webster has worked with a number of people at the State Health Division to develop a suggested school curriculum on AIDS. The legislature ordered it.
If safer sex practices are left out of the curriculum, then I think that we are denying an education to the children who deserve that education.
Her argument is a practical one.
Having known people now, a number of people who have died from AIDS, I don't want to continue to see people dying from AIDS. And I would a lot rather be embarrassed in talking about safer sex practices to students than to see students get infected.
There are already a number of school districts offering AIDS education after working with the State Health Division. Vern Duncan said he did not know the Health Division had even prepared a suggested curriculum. He hopes to hold another public hearing before his rule goes before the State Board of Education for final action. Chuck Diamond reporting for Newsroom 6.
A Deschutes County jury will soon decide Oregon's next death penalty case. 18-year-old Randy Guzak of Redmond has been convicted of 5 counts of aggravated murder in the deaths of a Terrebonne couple. Rodney Hauser and his wife Lois were found shot to death in their home last June. The jury begins hearing the penalty phase of the trial on Tuesday, and it must decide if Guzak should be sentenced to death or spend his life in prison.
Governor Goldsmith's plan to combat crime is getting mixed reviews. Today, local government leaders joined the chorus of those reacting to that $11 million plan. Eric Mason of our Willamette Valley Bureau reports.
You could call it prisoners on parade. Every month, 300 new inmates enter the correction system in the state of Oregon. And with no extra space to keep them, 300 are sent back to the streets after serving only a fraction of the time they were sentenced to. as Governor Goldschmidt unveiled his $11 million plan to get control of the problem yesterday. City mayors and county commissioners listened closely. Today, those local officials came forward with their opinions. The reviews were mixed. While Salem Mayor Sue Miller applauded the intent of the plan, she, like other Valley mayors, are concerned that Salem is ending up with an additional 130 new beds.
I'm afraid I see this as a reality check on what a shambles the state system is in. And Salem and this area traditionally are always the cheapest, fastest way for the state to try to fix a real problem.
Goldschmidt has long promised that no expansion would take place in the Salem area. The mayors say the plan to start double bunking at the prison will only get their support after the dormitory there is shut down. They also refuse to accept any expansion at the already overcrowded release center.
We around this part of the state call it not a release center, but the escape center or the walkaway center.
Meanwhile, Congressman Denny Smith, who is leading another fight to put prisoners behind bars longer with an initiative petition, says he has almost 50,000 signatures. While Smith says the Goldschmidt plan is needed, it's too little, too late.
I think there is no doubt that the legislature has punted the problem to the voters more than once. And the voter is pretty overtaxed in Oregon, and he'd like to see the legislature make some of those tough decisions. We've had a very liberal legislative leadership who were more worried about the criminal element than they were about the victim.
In the past, Goldschmidt and others have charged Smith with grandstanding because his plan to keep repeat felons behind bars longer isn't tied to any money-raising plan. In Salem, Eric Mason, Newsroom 6, Willamette Valley Bureau.
$50,000 worth of frozen salmon stolen in Portland yesterday was recovered in Clark County, Washington today. It was still frozen. The missing refrigerator unit turned up on an Allied Van Lines parking lot. Inside, the Clark County Sheriff's Department found 18,000 pounds of salmon. This afternoon, the fish and trailer were returned to their rightful owner, the S&S Seafood Company on Northeast Columbia. Co-owner Steve Spencer says the trailer was stolen about 12:30 Thursday morning.
His night watchman was parked right over there in the Nabisco parking lot, and he was just sitting there with these lights off, and the guy drove right into here, right where this was, hooked onto it, and pulled out. Night watchman saw everything. He got a description of the man who took off with it. We feel it had to be somebody inside our business because the trailer was only here for 4 hours. The tractor pulled away for a couple hours, and they came right in between the times and stole the van.
Spencer says a tractor was stolen just a few blocks from the fish trailer the same night, leading him to believe the same person used the stolen tractor to pull the stolen trailer. The Portland police and FBI are still investigating why.
See those drops of water on that lens?
Lots of them today.
Fair weather Phil Volker is frowning because March's first weekend will be wet.
Yes, but you know, it gives him something to talk about. Phil?
I'm not frowning. Actually, I'm happy to see it. Looks like it's going to be a great weekend for staying indoors. Some good news for fishermen, though. We'll see a lot of rain coming up tonight, tomorrow, and on Sunday, but the river levels should begin to drop on Monday, so that might be your best bet for going fishing. We had a lot of rain over the area today as an active cold front moved through the area. In fact, it moved through about midday, giving us our heaviest rain. Since that time, the clouds are beginning to actually break up just a little bit, and it looks like we'll see just scattered showers overnight tonight. Let's take a look at our morning low temperatures. Fairly nice across the region, mostly in the 30s and 40s west side, 35 at Olympia, one of the cooler spots, 32 at Bellingham, the coldest. Here in the metro area, 46 out at Hillsborough, 44 at the airport, also over in Vancouver, and 48 degrees down to the south at North Bend and Medford, the two warmest locations. East side temperatures primarily in the 30s, but 40 degrees to the Dalles, the warmest, and 17 degrees over in Enterprise. That was the coolest spot. 18 degrees also at Meacham. High temperatures today mostly in the 50s west of the Cascades, 52 in Vancouver, 51 at Hillsborough, and 50 at the airport. The warmest east side, 63 degrees at Walla Walla, the coolest 41 at Ephrata. Rainfall the past 24 hours, we've had 1/3 of an inch here in the metro area and about the same in the Willamette Valley. Along the coast, though, down at Brookings, they've had well over an inch, inch and a third to be exact. It looks like our rain will taper off a little bit tonight, but look for more coming up tomorrow, and I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Keep smiling.
Thanks, Phil. Coming up next, the Milwaukee area apartment complex comes under the scrutiny of the local fire marshal again.
And how baking a cake with a Mickey Mouse or a big bird on it could result in a lawsuit. We'll tell you more next.
Beaver Beaverton Nissan closing in on #1 in the USA with special values like a brand new 1988 Nissan Sentra for only $49.88. That's right, only $49.88 after factory rebate. Or drive home any Nissan Stanza, sedan, wagon, or 4x4 and receive $1,000 cash back from the factory. And remember, Beaverton Nissan put you into a brand new Nissan Sentra for only $49.88. Beaverton Nissan closing in on #1 in the USA, 3855 Southwest Cedar Hills Boulevard.
Come on into Coast to Coast.
If you haven't been to Coast store, try us. We have everything you need.
Save during our total hardware sale on Laser X2 saw blades by Vermont American with V-shaped carbon teeth for twice the cutting edge, just $5.99. And save on Yale security locks at twin packs. Entrance and deadbolt with one key convenience, only $11.99 after $4 rebate at your local Coast to Coast hardware stores.
Where? Nexus.
Where did you
It's
get
in salon.
that hair?
Only in salon.
Excuse me if I stare. Where?
Nexus.
Where?
Nexus.
Where did you get that
Only in
hair?
salon.
Ooh, Nexus. Ooh, Nexus.
Nexus Products, where you go for beautiful hair.
Sparkles and it shines. It's just made for good times, smiling faces, people laughing. A magical place that really happens. Portland Saturday Market. Portland Saturday Market.
Portland's unique marketplace, Portland Saturday Market, opens tomorrow for its 15th season.
If you have trouble balancing your budget, you'll understand the frustrations of Washington state lawmakers. Without enough money to pay the state's bills, they were forced to extend a major deadline today. Roger Gadley of our Vancouver Bureau has that story.
The legislative machine in Olympia that has smoothly and efficiently cranked out bills all session long suddenly today seemed to have gotten sand in its gears. Under session rules, all bills had to be passed by 5 o'clock today or they die. But Camas Senator Hal Zimmerman says the current backlog of important bills is so thick it had to be bound into a book. The result? The 5 o'clock deadline had to be extended to Sunday. The biggest delay is a crisis in state employees' health insurance benefits. Blue Cross threatened to cut off health coverage if either the employees or the lawmakers didn't come up with roughly $100 million in additional premiums. State workers say making them pay part of their benefits would amount to a cut in wages.
It doesn't make me very happy. It's essentially taking away what a lot of people consider insignificant pay raises that we've had over the last few years.
Lawmakers say the state can't afford to pay the entire premium increase, but the democratically controlled House voted an extra $35 million for state workers' insurance premiums and another $25 million for teachers who will face a similar crisis this fall. The Republican-controlled Senate voted no money at all for teachers and only $23 million for state workers.
We just pour money out there just to say, hey, whatever it costs for it, that's okay. That is not going to work.
Vancouver's Senator Al Bauer, a Democrat, says neither the state workers nor the teachers are going to forgive the Republicans.
They'll remember.
Yeah. Come election time.
Oh, yes. Yes. And that's not too far off.
Lawmakers say the important bills will be finished by the end of the weekend.
The rest of next week will be spent working out differences between House and Senate versions of the bills, what's called conference committees. But the lawmakers don't have a lot of time. The session is scheduled to end March 10th. That's next Thursday. I'm Roger Gadley, Newsroom 6, Vancouver Bureau.
Armed with a list of safety problems, the Oak Lodge Fire Marshal today inspected a Milwaukee apartment complex. It was the latest round in a continuing controversy aimed at making that complex safer for the residents. Peter Murphy was there as the inspectors detailed the shortcomings.
Fire Marshal's office, we need to make an inspection of your smoke detector. May we have entry?
So began Phase 3 in the Oak Lodge Fire Department effort to make Los Cerritos a safer place to live. Phase 1 began in August when the fire marshal identified safety problems such as defective smoke alarms, inoperable alarm pole stations, and fire hazards. In December, the owner, Clifford Payne, was cited. Now the fire marshal is back.
We are attempting to do everything within the limits of the law that are dictated under the Uniform Fire Code to correct and eliminate. And you ask about shutting down, it's very difficult many times, but if need be and we can convince the courts that this is a necessity, we will do everything in our powers to do this. And we have a...
Residents of the complex say they've complained about the safety hazards to no avail.
It's very unsafe, probably, as you can see. Yeah.
Have you brought this to the attention of the manager and the owner?
I wrote a letter.
And what was your response to the letter?
Ill, quite a bit. My son's been ill.
What did they say or what did they do when you wrote the letter?
They've been in here 3 times to look at things and write the checklist down, what's wrong, and they're going to fix it in a week or whatever, or 2 weeks. And they never fixed anything here.
Attempts at getting a response from the manager yielded only a no comment. Fire Marshal did note that some of the 53 specific problems had been repaired, but said the majority remained unattended. He said that this inspection was conducted at the request of the owner's attorney, but added that it was only one more step in the complicated process of making the complex safer. The next step, he said, may involve going to court. I'm Peter Murphy reporting for Newsroom 6.
Let's talk pastries. If you want to give someone a cake decorated with the likeness of Big Bird or Garfield the cat, you'll have to bake it yourself.
Some of the companies which license those cartoon figures are cracking down on bakeries. Mark Hendricks is standing by right now at Chikiva's on Southeast Hawthorne. Mark, are some of these bakeries worried?
Well, surely they are. They've heard horror stories from back east in which lawyers for the licensing companies are said to have sued baking companies for thousands of dollars. None of the local bakers I spoke with is willing to risk trademark infringement trouble.
Until recently, the Beaverton Bakery made lots of them. Cakes in the shape of Snoopy, Garfield, or some other popular character. It never occurred to owner Charlie Schubert that he was breaking the law.
I guess we should have known it, but we didn't really realize it, because there's a lot of pressure from the parents, you know, or mothers or teachers or whatever to do this sort of thing.
That is, until the National Association of Retail Bakers let its members know about the lawsuits by the licensing firms.
It's my understanding that they simply hire a law firm to come out and buy a cake that has a copyright violation on it, such as a Sesame Street, for instance. They take a picture of the cake, take the sales receipt. Those two together are all the evidence they need to prosecute you. And in the East, where they have prosecuted bakers for violating the copyright law, they've never lost a case.
So customers who want Mickey Mouse or even a copyrighted napkin design must settle for something else. Dinosaur cakes are popular. Kids eat them up. And at last word, no member of the Tyrannosaurus rex species had hired a lawyer. Still, some parents who want the perfect party cake are pushing the bakers to bend the rules.
A lot of people says, well, can't you just change a line? You can't do that. You can't just change a line, because if the child says, oh, that's Garfield, it's still, you can still get sued for that.
Her bakery will do puppies, sailboats, just about anything, unless it's copyrighted.
It's not worth it to try and make money on a cake when you might end up losing your business over it. It's just not worth it.
I spoke with a representative of Hallmark about this issue. He says his company normally would either ask the bakers to stop copying the designs or would seek a financial cut of any of the projects involving Hallmark's figures. He says companies like his protect their copyrights because that's what their product is. Hallmark's designs, he says, are protected in the same way that the formula for Coca-Cola is. Mike and Shirley?
Mark, you know, a lot of people say this just borders on the ridiculous. Isn't there any way to get around it? What if you've got a 4-year-old who's adamant about having Big Bird on her cake?
There are a couple of things you can do. First of all, you can create a cake like this. This is from a card that has Winnie the Pooh on it. This has a generic bear on it. Let's see if I can tip it up for you. This is a public domain bear, I guess you could call it. It's just a generic bear, and you can do something like this. You could also buy a Garfield or a Winnie the Pooh or some such thing, or a Snoopy, and put it in the middle of a cake, and that way you've gotten around all of this this trademark infringement or copyright infringement problem.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Hendricks at a local bakery with a generic but legal bear.
Right. Coming up next, the price of a stamp.
And a search for transplant donor money. We'll be right back.
If you were the Department of Agriculture,
you'd say this meat from Thriftway was choice. If you were a consumer group, you'd be happy it was guaranteed and thrilled at these prices.
This week at Thriftway, assorted pork chops, rib, loin, and end cut are only $1.29 a pound. Fresh green broccoli is only 39 cents a pound. And chicken of the sea, chunk light tuna, is only 58 cents each for the first 2 cans. Get a little respect at Thriftway.
Say it, we'll play it. It's 9 minutes till noon. Look at it, blue skies and plenty of northwest sunshine. A perfect day for anything but working indoors. Makes you wish you were rich, doesn't it? You know you could be. We're talking millions in the lotto jackpot. Hey, if you're 18 or older, it's only $1 to play. So lighten up. Some lucky dog's gonna win it. Coming at you now with 3 Dog Night. Oh!
The Acro Mr. Inside floor mat is tough tweed nylon with a non-slip base. And in March, it's just $4.99 at participating True Value hardware stores.
We're here at the National Space Satellite Dish, where for 3 days in a row, scientists have received messages from deep space. Dr. Gilbert.
At precisely 12 noon, we have received the signal.
And now, as the hour of 12 approaches, we listen for these strange sounds.
It's no mystery where great refreshment comes from. Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
Their playlist, our playlist. 92.3 KGON. Great classic rock, great new rock.
Tonight is do or die for the Portland Winterhawks season.
Yeah, they're hoping to extend it a little tonight, aren't they?
The playoffs have been something the Winterhawks have been a member of all 12 years. The franchise has been in existence. This will likely be the first year that will not happen, but it will give them something to work for next year. Tonight, the Winterhawks take the Coliseum ice against the Kamloops Blazers with their playoff hopes hanging by the thinnest of threads. They need to win tonight. In fact, they need to win their remaining games to make the playoffs. And while that is unlikely, it is typical of the way the season has been going for Portland. Kamloops, by the way, can clinch the Western Division crown with a victory tonight. Oregon State has cemented second place in the Pac-10 Conference, a position they will hold during next week's conference tournament, regardless of the outcome of tomorrow's season finale against Oregon. Last night, with Anthony Taylor hitting the bullseye often in the first half, the Ducks made a bid for an upset at Gill, but the Beavers know how to handle the lemon and green when crunch time comes. Now, this night's hero was sophomore Gary Payton, who potted a career-high 30 points as Oregon State beat the Ducks for the 19th time in their last 20 games. The final this time was 59-47. Oregon State now 12-5 in Pac-10 play.
What's coming up later?
Mike Miadich, the All-State quarterback from Lake Ridge. There's a name we have not heard on a letter of intent for college football. Pat Helberg is going to tell us why and what Mr. Miadich intends to do next year.
Okay, we'll see you a little later.
Thanks, Rick. Well, save up those quarters. As expected, the Independent Postal Rate Commission today recommended increasing the cost of a first-class stamp to 25 cents. That hike was just one among many suggested by the panel in an effort to help the post office avoid a projected $5 billion deficit. There was some good news today, though. The panel is also recommending charging consumers less than a quarter for bill-paying mail. The panel's ideas must now go to the Board of Governors for a vote. Mike?
Here in Oregon, a new organization has been formed to help raise money for people who cannot afford to pay for life-saving transplants. Sandy James explains.
Give me life. Give me that light.
This is 2-year-old Adam Sullivan of Tigard. He has leukemia. It was diagnosed just 2 weeks ago. His best chance for survival is to have a bone marrow transplant if a good match can be found. But like many Oregonians, his family does not have the money for a transplant. Adam's mother is a nursing student. Her insurance does not cover transplants, and the state of Oregon no longer pays for most of them.
I don't want him to die.
A trust fund has been set up for Adam's transplant. Donations may be made through First Interstate Bank. Kay Irwin of Aloha was in the same situation just a few months ago. We first told you about her in October. She needs a liver transplant but can't afford it. Recently, Irwin says the Pacific Presbyterian Hospital in California heard about Oregon's transplant funding problem and offered to perform her transplant without the money up front. She leaves tomorrow for an evaluation.
I'm so excited.
You're not scared.
Oh, no. I want this so badly. You can't believe it. You can't go on living like this. I can walk for a little while and I get exhausted. I have to sit down. I can't do any housework. Can't pick up my grandchild. That's the thing I'm looking forward to when I get out of the hospital.
Meanwhile, Irwin's son, Craig, has set up an organization called Oregon Transplant Project. It's a two-pronged fundraising project for people who need transplants.
One is going to be a telephone campaign where we have set up a bank of telephones to contact people on a daily basis. The other thing is that I will be meeting with an advertising firm from Salem later next week, and we're looking at putting together a statewide advertising campaign to try to raise money for these people that need transplants.
The phone solicitation is to begin Monday. I'm Sandy James reporting for Newsroom 6.
If you'd like to donate to Adam Sullivan's fund, you can do so at any First Interstate bank.
Coming up later in this newscast, weekend bargains on jewelry and maternity clothing.
Next, our final Jefferson Award winner who works to keep people from going hungry. Details when we come back.
We've done it again. A special purchase.
I love my